Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Friends, I invite you to turn to the book of Ruth, and we're going to be in chapter 3 today. So take your phone out, and assuming that you're going to your U version of the Bible, you would go to Ruth chapter 3, or for those of you that like to hold the book, get it out, and we're going to go and continue this story that we've been looking at, one of brokenness and redemption, kind of the goodness and the providential hand of God with some people named Naomi and Ruth. I want to catch you up to speed on kind of where we've been. At the beginning of the book, you see a family, you see a woman named Naomi who loses her husband, Elimelech, and she has two sons who have two wives, but both of her sons die. You can imagine that's a pretty difficult time to live in, right? But it's not just that. A famine had hit the land, and because of that, they were displaced. They went from where they were. They had to go to Moab for a while so that they could find means of provision. All of this is imagery of what it really means to live outside of Eden. And when you think of someone named Naomi, and her name means sweet delight, her name is supposed to be a synonym for Eden. And of course, for Naomi, she's like, look at my life. Would you call my life Eden? Because I would not. And because of all the suffering that she was going through, when you're trying to find provision for yourself, when you've lost multiple loved ones, it's like the suffering that she was going through was keeping her from seeing the goodness of God and the providential hand of God at work in her life. Maybe you've been there before. Well, the story didn't end there, because what we've also seen is that there was a time where Ruth, one of her daughters-in-law, walks up to a field. And in that time, in the ancient Near East, there was a provision that goes back to the book of Leviticus that was called the law of gleaning. And so they would have a field where they would, they would grow their stuff. It's how they would eat. It's also how they would make their living. But they would set the edge of their field. And by the provision of God, they were not meant to take any of the stuff out there. That was meant to be for people that were poor and didn't have a way of taking care of themselves. And here comes Ruth. Ruth walks up to the field of a guy named Boaz, and she starts to glean, and she's picking things up. And Boaz shows up, and he's like, wow, who is this? And finds out that it's Ruth. This is the same Ruth that when Naomi was trying to push her away, and it's like, hey, go your own way and it's fine. Ruth said, absolutely not. I'm going to stay beside you, and we're going to be together. You're going to be my people. The God that you worship is going to be my God, and this is what I'm going to see through. It's like there's a covenant between these two ladies, and it's a pretty beautiful picture. But as she goes to the field of Boaz, she runs into and meets somebody that would be a Goel, Goel. That's the Hebrew word for a family redeemer. And so there's kind of hope on the horizon for these people, because as they were coming back home, Naomi didn't have any land to come back to. Elimelech very, very possibly sold it before they left because of the famine. So it's like, what's going to be my means of provision? Like, how's this going to work? What's my life going to look like? And she didn't have any answers, but they meet this guy named Boaz, who was related to Naomi. When you think about it, the first part of the story is how we sometimes feel, right? You can feel the thickness of what it means to live outside of Eden. You know what it's like to deal with death. You know what it's like to struggle with provision. And you know what it's like when there's hardship in your family. All of those are word pictures that you get in the study of Ruth on what it is like living outside of God's plan, meaning living in Eden. But as a friend used to say to me, you got to keep walking on. You have to keep going. And for Ruth, there's more to the story that we haven't gotten to, and that's where we're going to pick up. So now Naomi, who you've heard about, she's got this plot. So now we've got a guy in the story, and Naomi, maybe a bit of a schemer. I don't know. Let's see. In Ruth chapter 3, here's the way it starts. So Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, shouldn't I find rest for you so that you will be taken care of? Now, isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? And the answer is yes. Earlier, Boaz had said, you can come into the field. You don't have to just glean. You can come into the field, and you can even take leftovers to Naomi. Everybody's going to be taken care of. Well, this evening he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Woo! See, this is where it becomes like a Hallmark movie, y'all. Got hold on, it's about to get interesting. We're going to go from rated G to a solid PG-13, I think. How many of you are, so for those of you that are married, you kind of have to go back in your mind's eye to when you were single. For those of you that are single, you're already right there. But do you have one of those friends, that was like, hey, have you seen such and so over there? Did you ever have that moment before? Where somebody's trying to hook you up with somebody and you're over there going, leave me alone. I can do my work on my own. You have this idea with Naomi in this moment right here that like she's looking at Ruth and going, Boaz, right? She's like Match.com before there was Match.com, something like that. But here's the thing about Boaz. Remember, he's a Goel. He's already been named that way. He's in the family, which means he can be a family redeemer. Now, for those of you that weren't here, this is what it means. That means for Boaz to be a family redeemer, that means that he has to buy back the land that was theirs, that he has to be willing to put them on the land, and he has to protect and take care of the people that he bought the land for and is providing the land for, which means he's taking all of it on himself. Does that make sense? That's what it means to be a Goel. And he can because he's a family member. And you've already seen it. He's the kind of guy that would do something just like that. He's a godly man. When he walks up and he sees the people that works for them, he gives a blessing to them and they bless him in return. You can see that this is a man that is respected and he is godly. He's a person of character. And what that means is that he would redeem these two widows. He would redeem Ruth literally and Naomi by marrying Ruth and taking in Naomi as his family to care for. He could be what is called their lever. Now, for those of you that have a phone, feel free to take a picture of that screen. So he's in the family line to be a Goel, which means a redeemer, but he's also able to be a lever. Now, just so you know, what this idea of a lever is if there's ever in the ancient Near East, and specifically in Israel, that if there was the death of a child, a son, and they had been married, but they had not produced a male offspring to carry on the name, it would become the responsibility of the next brother in line to take that wife in under the protection of the family so as to bear a son so that the name of the family goes on, but also the land goes on with it. It's a means of provision for both the family and for the woman. Because outside of that protection, usually slavery was probably not terribly far down the line for her. So it was meant to be really the best for everybody. Now, we're at the end in this story, we're at the end of what is called the barley harvest. So they've been out and they've been working the fields and bringing it in. And it's been long days, but it's also where their money comes from. So what do you do when you get to the end of a harvest? Of course, you throw a party, right? You celebrate it because that's what people do. And maybe Naomi had something like Psalm 104:15 in mind. I don't know. Wine gladdens the heart of a man. I don't know. But watch what happens. In Ruth 3:7, after Boaz ate, drank, and it wasn't water. After Boaz ate, drank, and was in good spirits, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley, and she, meaning Ruth, came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. What's going on? My goodness. Well, first of all, when it says after Boaz ate and drank and was in good spirits, that's the Hebrew word tov, which is exactly, you connected it, the same word that is used of creation. God created, and he said it was good. It's tov. So Boaz is in tov spirits. All right, y'all with me so far? And then Ruth decides now's a good time. I mean, his guard, think about it. I kind of wonder, his guard might be down just a little bit. And so maybe this is a good moment to pitch an idea. I don't know. But if you go back, you can get where I'm coming from. Because in Ruth 3:3, watch. So Naomi, the wooing coach, Match.com lady, here's what she says. She's talking to Ruth and she says, wash, put on perfumed oil, wear your best clothes, go down to the threshing floor, but don't let the man know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. Girl's a schemer, sure feels like to me. What do you think? We want to make sure he's got a full tummy. Is the wine gone? Now's your time. It's basically the advice. Oh, and don't go in looking nasty. It's like, hey, you want to smell good, all right? Don't look nasty. You want to smell good. You want to look good. You want him to have a happy belly, a happy tummy, as we would say in my house. That's what seems. All right, so with all that in mind, I sit there and go, something seems a little off here. First of all, because I couldn't imagine doing this with one of my 4 daughters. All right, get dressed up, you know. Something just seems a little bit off, but really kind of what hits me is this. Is Naomi asking Ruth to take advantage of Boaz by asking him to be the lever in marriage? It sure feels like it, doesn't it? Or is that just me? It feels like it. And she uses this phrase, watch, she says, wash, anoint yourself, and change your clothes. That's interesting. Now, I think that's coming from somewhere. I don't think that's a random line. In the ancient Near East, they would often wear what were called mourning garments, not in the mourning garments, but remember, Ruth has also lost her husband. And so mourning, like grieving garments, they would often wear that when they had lost a loved one. But it's not just that. That same phrase is used somewhere else. You kind of have to go forward in time to see it. But remember David? You know, David, after his huge mistake with Bathsheba, which is kind of the understatement of the morning, but this huge mistake with Bathsheba, he finds out that he's gotten her pregnant. And he's like, okay, this is bad because Uriah's been off at war. He's like, okay, so obviously he's not the baby daddy. And everybody's going to know that because he wasn't proximate to be the cause, right? So how does this work? All right, we're going to bring Uriah back in. And then hopefully in the time that he's in, he might lay with her. And then, oh, see, they have a baby. Oh, good for you. Except he wouldn't do it. Because when his men were out to battle, he was an honorable man. He says, I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be there. And David's like, all right, that plan didn't work. So what do I do? Well, he has Uriah sent out front. He has the troops withdraw, and basically Uriah is completely slaughtered. You might remember the story. It's a big effort at a cover-up, but David went into mourning. And the reason that he went into mourning after this is because the child that they bore died. And if you look at 2 Samuel 12:20, it says, after the death of his infant son, read it slowly, David gets up, he washes himself, anoints himself with oil, and he changes his clothes. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Because this is exactly what Naomi just said to Ruth. The same thing. And what he does is David goes to the house of the Lord, he worships, he returns to the palace where he asks for food to eat and whatnot, and he gets back to life. Now, I bring all this up to make a point. Ruth has been grieving, and let's imagine that she's been wearing mourning clothes. Well, if she's wearing mourning clothes, she's communicating something to the people that are around her. Basically, she's saying this, I'm not available. I'm off the market. So maybe, and this is what some Old Testament scholars think, maybe what's happening here is Ruth has been presenting as the grieving widow, and Naomi has come alongside her and saying, it's time to come out of the grief, and it's time to move on with what is next for you. Not that you didn't lose your husband, of course you did. That was her son too. But maybe it's time to move on with what's next for you. And so, here's what happens. Let's go back to the story. Hallmark, verse 4, when he lies down, notice the place. This is the advice. Notice the place where he's lying. Go in and uncover his feet and lie down. And then he will explain to you what you should do. Now, there's one Old Testament scholar that is like, now this is really rife with sexual imagery. And it kind of reads like that a little bit. That sexual symbolism is all over this story with what Ruth is doing to Boaz. This guy thinks that she's seducing him sexually in this moment. Here's why. He says something like this. The terminology that's happening here can connote sexual activity, like going to know him. Well, a lot of times in the Old Testament, to know is the exact language for having sexual intercourse with someone. Uncover him He says, which can be used in sexually illicit contexts, like uncover his feet. Feet could refer to, I'm trying to be G-rated here for y'all, but feet, he says, could refer to the male reproductive organ. That's as G-rated as I've got, right? He says, there's that. And it's not just that. He says, lie down. Well, a lot of times in the Old Testament, lying down is lying down, and it's not always lying down. All right, is everybody with him so far? It's not just that, not done. I promise we'll move on, but here we go. When was this set? It was set in the barley harvest. And the barley harvest is this symbol of fertility. Well, you know where this is going. Now you've got Ruth going in and laying at the feet of Boaz, uncovering his feet. And this Old Testament scholar goes, basically something sexually untoward is happening in this room that night. I mean, maybe, but probably not. Probably not. And to understand this, you have to go to another part of the Bible. You have to go to Genesis 38. So we just went forward to David, but now we're going to go back. And I'm going to try to thread a needle to make some sense of something here for you. And I'll just tell you what happened in Genesis 38. You get introduced to two people, Judah and Tamar. Now, to understand the story here, Judah marries a Canaanite woman, and they have 3 sons. Now, Judah looks at his oldest son, who they named E-R, and gave him a Canaanite wife named Tamar. Now, dies without children. Does that sound familiar? Because it feels a lot like Ruth, right? It's not like there's a child here to carry on the family name or the land. And so dies. So what happens is the law of levirate marriage kicks in. He's got how many sons? 3. So the oldest son did not produce a legitimate heir, so it now becomes the responsibility of the second son to take her in and to marry her and to provide an heir for the family name and for the family's stuff, for a lack of better words. The second son's name was Onan. Now, Onan did not honor his responsibility as the husband to her, and as a result, God brings judgment down on him, and he dies. So now you're Judah, and you're down to 1 son. Both of his other sons have been married to the same woman. And you're going, every one of my sons that marries this lady dies. I think I'll pass on number 3. And it's kind of how he felt, but he came up with a clever kind of ruse. He's like, I don't know. He's pretty young. So I'd like for him to age just a little bit, and then, maybe we'll get around to that levirate marriage thing. But the truth is, that's not what Judah wanted at all. And she knew it. She picked up on it. In the ancient Near East, and this is why it's important, the only name that was listed in a genealogy was the male head of household. That was it. And this is what it means. If nobody assumes that role, it's as if your name never existed. It's like you're walking, but you're not alive. It's like your name doesn't exist. So to bear a son was to honor the legacy of the one that was lost and to provide for the woman that otherwise had no means of provision. So Judah's not interested in giving his 3rd son. So what happens? I'm glad you asked. It's all in Genesis 38. I know you're going to read it this week because you're like that, right? Here's what happened. What happened was Tamar is like, this is not right by me. And by the way, she's right. It wasn't right by her. So she disguises herself as a prostitute, goes out on the street, and whoop, guess who comes by? Judah. And she has sex with him and bears a child. It's like, if you're not going to be faithful to God, then I'm going to trick you into it. She's crafty. She's crafty. Now, with all that, how y'all doing out there? Y'all tracking with me so far? Y'all good? You're like, I live in America, man. But anyway, this is what happened back then. I'm going to make something make sense to you when you go over to Ruth chapter 4, verse 12, you remember the story I just told you from Genesis 38? Watch this one line. It says, may your family be like that of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah. Now you know the story. Now you know how it happened. All right, let's get back to Ruth and Boaz, because this is Hallmark Day, right? So let's go back to verse 7. After Boaz ate, drank, and was in Tov spirits, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley, and she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. And so he's like, who are you? Now, this is not the first time he's met her. Remember, he's already seen her when she was gleaning at the field, right? He knows who she is. He even made the connection. Whoa, wait, you're the one that did not leave Naomi, my family member, when you could have. You stayed with her. You're an honorable woman. He knows who she is. He knows who she is. I don't know, but there it is. Who are you? And I don't know if this is the way it rolled, but did she do this and uncover her face? Because she goes, I'm Ruth, your servant. Just as husbands and wives talk to each other today, right? I'm Ruth, your servant. Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Take me under your wing. I want you to stop for just a second. Do you remember earlier when Boaz met Ruth? Not only did he provide food for her and for Naomi, he prayed a blessing over her. Do you remember this? In Ruth 2:12, he said, may the Lord reward you for what you've done, for how you've taken care of Naomi. May the Lord reward you for what you've done. And may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. So she just looked at Boaz and said, what? Will you take me under your wings for refuge? His prayer for her in Ruth chapter 2 is that may the Lord provide for you so that you will come under the wings of his protection. I think another way of understanding what's happening in this moment is she is asking Boaz to be the fulfillment of God's blessing to her. That literally Boaz would be the wing of protection that Boaz had prayed God would give to her. He's like, would you be that? What a moment. This is no Southern Belle, y'all. I mean, who's taking some initiative here? She is. She is. But that got me thinking, Boaz, what are you doing over there, man? Right? I mean, you're single. I mean, I know that there's an age gap between the two of them, apparently a pretty good one. But why aren't you taking the initiative? Because it seems like that's the right thing to do. I've got 4 daughters. I'm here to let you know this morning, I am not interested in a guy that is not going to be, well, taking initiative, leading well, letting them know what his intentions are with them, fully disclose a 10-year financial plan for them. All it. It's expected. And you got Boaz over there that's like asleep at the barley pile, and Ruth comes walking in. And I'm like, dude, what's up? I think there's a reason for it, but hold on. Watch verse 11. He says, don't be afraid, my daughter. I'll do whatever you say. Since all the people in my town know that you're a woman of noble character. It's like people have figured it out. This is a great girl. Yes, it's true that I'm a family redeemer. Watch, he says, but there's a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. So lie down until the morning. And now you know why he doesn't take the initiative. There was somebody else. You see the character of Boaz. He's like, I'll do it, but I'm just not, there's somebody closer to you for this. And so you need to go to him. Do you see the honor here? And he's like, it's at night. If people see you walking out of this place, they're going to be thinking things. So I don't want them to be thinking things about you. It's like, lay down, go to sleep, and we're going to get you out of here in the morning, because here's why. When you think about it, if she walks out and people think that she's had sexual relationship with Boaz, she's going to be a bit of a pariah in that community. And whoever the first in line is to be the lever and to be the goel, yeah, they're not going to do it. And Boaz is like, no, nothing's happening here. So all that stuff before about, all this symbolism, about a sexual relationship between the two of them, I don't buy that for 1 second. Every step along the way, what you see from Boaz is him trying to protect her and take care of her. I think that's a better way of understanding this story. But I also want you to take note of this. You have to go back to Genesis 38. God redeemed Tamar in spite of Judah's unfaithfulness. He was trying to withhold his son to honor what God wanted. But do you notice here, he redeems Ruth's family because of Boaz's faithfulness. Something I want you to remember this morning. God does not quit on getting redemption done. God is not a quitter on this. You see unfaithfulness, God is still working. You see faithfulness, God is still working. God does not quit on this. Now that said, working with God is always the best way to go. It's always the best way to go. So what happens? Look at verse 14. So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark. And then Boaz said, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. And now you know why. He's protecting her again. But there's something that kind of hit me as I was reading this. This whole story is happening in Bethlehem. The whole story is happening in Bethlehem. And it reminds me of another couple. Somewhere down the line in Bethlehem who were sexually faithful. They had honored their covenant with God. She had conceived Jesus through the Holy Spirit. And you've got this guy, you're probably figuring out who it is right now, right? Christmas isn't far away. You have Joseph and Mary. And you got Joseph sitting there going, I know how babies are born. This doesn't make any sense to me. This doesn't make any sense to me. And he could have, in this moment, cast her out. And had he cast her out, it would have been very difficult for Mary, just like in this story, to find somebody else that would take her in under the protection of their wings. That is not the story that you got from Joseph. Because what Joseph said was, I can't totally make sense of it all. An angel comes to speak to him. He says, and we're going forward in this. We're doing this. And when you think about it, Joseph honored Mary in that moment. I'm keeping you, I'm providing for you, and I'm going to protect you. Just like Boaz honors Ruth in this moment. What you see in the rest of the chapter, Boaz sends her away in the early morning. He sends her away with a lot of food. He's like, hey, take a lot of food. Oh, don't forget to feed Naomi, right? Here you go. He gives it to her, just like Boaz would do. But there's one other thing that I want to connect for you this morning from some people that you've seen in this story that I think is pretty cool. If you were to look over at Matthew chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, and also look at verse 5, listen for just a second on what it says. It says, Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. That sounds familiar to you. Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Now you've met her. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. That's right, the prostitute. Boaz, who you now know, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. In 3 verses, you got 3 women mentioned in the lineage of Jesus. 2 of them were Moabites. They're non-Israelite women. And every single one of them find redemption in their brokenness. Every single one of them. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I doubt when all this hard stuff was going down for them that they were thinking something like this. Don't worry about it, because from our bloodline, the Messiah is going to be born. I don't think that's what they were thinking. I just don't. But that's exactly what was happening. That's exactly what was happening. So for whatever you're going through, whatever you brought into this space this morning, whatever darkness you've kind of been walking through, part of what we're supposed to learn from the story of Ruth is that God is working in 10,000 ways that we could have never seen happening. Never seen it. Never predicted it. Probably would have never even been able to pray to ask for it. God is working. I want to encourage you with something this morning. No matter what your circumstances are, and I mean, with a room of this kind of people, I imagine you brought some stuff into this place. No matter the circumstances, there is nothing beyond God's ability to respond to it and to offer redemption for it. There's nothing beyond it. God can do it. So when you think about us reading Matthew chapter 1, this genealogy, don't skip over the genealogy. There's some cool stuff in there. All of this leads to the birth of Jesus, the Savior. And when you get this, when you get what's happening in Ruth, you start to understand something about Jesus, I think, a little bit better. Boaz, who is the family redeemer, who sweeps in to his own family's darkness to pull them out of it. He went into the darkness to pull them out of it, is exactly the same thing that happened when Jesus came to the earth. He enters the darkness to redeem it, to fix it. It's what he does.
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.